The Ghost of Mr. Chew. In the bustling metropolis of Eastbridge, among its tall skyscrapers and busy streets, stood a grand old building known as the Eastbridge Opera House. Built in the late 1800s, it was a marvel of its time, adorned with ornate carvings, plush red velvet seats, and a magnificent chandelier that hung from its dome ceiling. But what many didn't know was that the Opera House had a resident ghost, the mysterious Mr. Chew. Mr. Edmund Chew was once the owner and primary benefactor of the Eastbridge Opera House. A lover of the arts, he dedicated his life to bringing the finest performances to the city. However, tragedy struck one fateful night in 1923. During a performance of The Phantom of the Opera, a stage malfunction caused a heavy sandbag to fall, striking Mr. Chew and taking his life. Since that day, there have been numerous accounts of strange occurrences within the theatre's walls. Performers would often speak of feeling a cold breeze while on stage, even when all windows and doors were firmly shut. Some claimed to hear faint melodies of operas long past, echoing through the empty halls late at night. But the most chilling tale was that of Mr. Chew's apparition. Clad in a pristine black tuxedo, the ghostly figure of Mr. Chew was said to appear in the private balcony box that once belonged to him. He would watch performances with an intense gaze, his eyes fixed on the stage. Many actors considered it a good omen if they spotted him, believing it meant their performance was worthy of his ethereal presence. But not all encounters were positive. On nights when the performances were subpar, mishaps would occur, props would go missing, lights would flicker, and on one occasion the grand chandelier swayed ominously, reminding everyone of the tragedy that had taken place beneath it. Jenna, a young actress making her debut at the Opera House, was both excited and anxious. She had heard the stories of Mr. Chew but dismissed them as mere urban legends. However, as the opening night of her show approached, strange things began to happen. Jenna would find her costume misplaced and her script pages turned. One evening, she even heard the haunting strains of an old opera being hummed from the shadows. Determined to confront the ghost and put an end to the disturbances, Jenna decided to spend a night at the Opera House. As midnight approached, the temperature dropped and the air grew dense. Jenna bravely called out, "Mr. Chew, if you're here, show yourself." To her astonishment, the figure of Mr. Chew materialized before her, his translucent form emanating a soft glow. "Why do you disturb my peace?" he whispered, his voice echoing through the vast hall. Jenna, gathering her courage, replied, "I respect your legacy, Mr. Chew, but I wish to perform without fear. Please, let me share my art with the world." Mr. Chew regarded her for a moment, before nodding slowly. "Very well," he murmured. "But remember, always honor this stage and the memories it holds." From that night on, Jenna's performances went off without a hitch. She soon became the talk of the town, her talent undeniable. And while she never saw Mr. Chew's ghost again, she always felt his presence, guiding and watching over her. The legend of the ghost of Mr. Chew remains an integral part of Eastbridge's cultural history. The Opera House, now a protected heritage site, continues to thrive, with artists from all over the world gracing its stage, always mindful of the spirit that may be watching from the shadows. The children of Misty Valley, a secluded region surrounded by towering mountains, was known for its perpetual fog. A thick, ethereal mist enveloped the area, casting a dreamlike hue over the land. But what truly set Misty Valley apart was not its weather, but the haunting legends that echoed through its hills, the tales of the children of Misty Valley. During the early 1900s, Misty Valley was a thriving mining community. Families settled and the sound of children's laughter often resonated through the streets. But disaster struck when a massive landslide buried the entrance to the main mine, trapping several miners inside, including many fathers from the village. The incident left numerous children orphaned, their futures uncertain. In the following years, strange occurrences began to take place. Residents reported seeing groups of children playing in the mist during twilight, their figures almost indistinguishable from the fog. They would sing eerie lullabies, their voices harmonizing with the wind and then disappear as suddenly as they appeared. Helen, a schoolteacher who had recently moved to Misty Valley, was both intrigued and saddened by the tales. She often heard the mysterious children's melodies and decided to investigate the phenomenon. One evening, as the mist grew thicker, Helen ventured out, guided only by the soft glow of her lantern. She followed the haunting lullabies until she reached an old, abandoned schoolhouse. Inside, she found a classroom filled with children, their faces obscured by the fog. They sat at desks, writing diligently, their papers filled with wishes and messages to their lost parents. Approaching the children, Helen tried to communicate, but they seemed unaware of her presence. Determined to help them find peace, Helen began to hold nightly classes, teaching the children and listening to their stories. She discovered that these were the spirits of the orphaned children, still yearning for their families and the life they once knew. Over time, a bond formed between Helen and the spectral children. She became their guardian, ensuring they were remembered and honored. With the support of the village, Helen established a memorial park on the grounds of the old schoolhouse, dedicated to the lost miners and their children. The park became a place of solace for the residents of Misty Valley, where they would leave toys, letters, and mementos for the children. And as the years went by, sightings of the children of Misty Valley became less frequent. Now, on certain mist-filled evenings, one can still hear the faint echoes of their lullabies, a reminder of the love and resilience of the children who once called Misty Valley home. Their spirits, while no longer wandering the streets, live on in the memories of the community, a testament to the enduring power of hope and the bonds that connect us all. The Ghost of Springwood Valley. Nestled among the verdant hills of the Midlands, Springwood Valley is a picturesque region known for its vibrant wildflowers, babbling brooks, and serene landscapes. But beneath this idyllic facade lies a haunting tale that has kept locals and travellers alike in its grip for generations: the legend of the Ghost of Springwood Valley. In the late 1800s, Springwood Valley was home to the affluent Wainwright family, who owned vast stretches of the land. Their sprawling estate, known as the Wainwright Manor, was the crown jewel of the valley. Eleanor Wainwright, the youngest daughter, was renowned for her beauty and grace. Her laughter was said to be so melodious that even the birds would stop to listen. But tragedy struck when Eleanor mysteriously disappeared one foggy evening. Despite extensive searches, she was never found. Months turned to years, and the once lively manor was shrouded in sorrow. Sir Reginald Wainwright, Eleanor's father, was especially devastated, spending nights wandering the estate, calling out for his lost daughter. Overcome with grief, he passed away, leaving the manor abandoned. However, as years passed, locals began to whisper of sightings of a ghostly figure near the valley's streams and meadows. A woman in a flowing white gown, her face obscured by a veil, was often seen wandering, her soft sobs echoing in the still night. Those who encountered her claimed that she would beckon to them, her voice eerily reminiscent of Eleanor's. Mila, a journalist intrigued by unsolved mysteries, arrived in Springwood Valley to unravel the truth behind the legend. She took up residence in the now dilapidated Wainwright Manor, hoping to find clues about Eleanor's fate. One evening, as the mist began to settle over the valley, Mila heard the faint sound of a lullaby. Following the melody, she found herself by a secluded brook. There, bathed in the silvery moonlight, stood the ethereal figure of Eleanor. Mila, though initially startled, approached the apparition, offering words of comfort. To her surprise, Eleanor responded, her voice tinged with sadness. She spoke of a forbidden love with a commoner from a neighboring village, and how they planned to elope. But on the fateful night of their escape, they were ambushed, and in the ensuing struggle, Eleanor fell into the brook, meeting her tragic end. Her lover, devastated, left the valley, never to return. Moved by the tale, Mila decided to give Eleanor the closure she longed for. She researched and located the descendants of Eleanor's lover and arranged for a memorial to be built by the brook, commemorating the star-crossed lovers. The following year, on the anniversary of Eleanor's disappearance, a grand ceremony was held. As the last rays of the sun bathed the valley in a golden hue, attendees claimed to see the figure of Eleanor one last time, smiling serenely before fading away. The ghost of Springwood Valley had finally found peace. Today, the memorial stands as a testament to a love that transcended time, and the legend of Eleanor Wainwright remains an integral part of Springwood's rich tapestry, reminding all of the enduring power of love and the mysteries that the heart holds. Legend of Sweet Oak Lake, with its crystal-clear waters and tree-lined shores, was a sight to behold. Located in a remote part of the country, it was a haven for those seeking tranquility. But its calm waters held a dark secret, a tale of love, betrayal, and a thirst for revenge. The legend of Lila, the vengeful spirit of Sweet Oak Lake. In the late 19th century, Lila, a young woman with raven-black hair and piercing blue eyes, lived in a cottage near the lake. She was deeply in love with a man named Samuel, a dashing young sailor who promised to marry her upon his return from the sea. They would often meet by the large oak tree at the lake's edge, swearing their undying love for each other. However, Samuel's heart wavered during his voyages. He fell for another, a wealthy merchant's daughter, and decided to marry her instead, thinking it would secure a better future. Upon his return, he avoided Lila, hoping she'd get the message and move on. Heartbroken and betrayed, Lila eventually learned of Samuel's deceit. One fateful night, driven by despair, she donned a white gown and walked into the lake, disappearing beneath its still waters. From that day on, Sweet Oak Lake was never the same. Travelers and locals began to report eerie occurrences. On moonlit nights, a ghostly figure in a white dress could be seen standing by the oak tree, her sorrowful cries echoing across the water. Male swimmers would often feel an icy grip on their ankles, trying to pull them under, while couples who visited the lake reported feeling an unseen presence trying to separate them. Elders in the nearby village spoke of Lila's unquenched thirst for revenge, warning young lovers to stay away from the lake, especially on the anniversary of her death. Decades later, a young historian named Clara visited Sweet Oak Lake to research the legend. As she delved deeper into Lila's story, she felt a strong connection and empathy towards the heartbroken spirit. Determined to help Lila find peace, Clara organized a lakeside ceremony to honor her memory. With the village gathered by the oak tree, Clara recited a poem dedicated to Lila, acknowledging her pain and betrayal. As the final words were spoken, a gentle breeze swept across the lake, and for a brief moment, the figure of Lila appeared, nodding in gratitude before fading away. Since that day, the sinister occurrences at Sweet Oak Lake ceased. Lila's spirit, having been acknowledged and remembered, finally found the peace she longed for. Today, the lake is a popular spot for couples, with many proposing under the oak tree, believing that Lila's blessing ensures a love that remains unbroken. The Little Girl in the Closet. In the heart of the town of Eldridge, nestled between modern buildings and bustling streets, stood the Carmichael Mansion. This grand, colonial-style house, with its intricate woodwork and vast gardens, was a relic of a bygone era. But while its exterior gleamed with elegance, its interior held a chilling secret. The tale of Eliza, the little girl in the closet. The Carmichael family, one of the wealthiest in Eldridge, had called the mansion home for generations. In the late 1800s, the household was abuzz with activity, as the Carmichaels were known for hosting grand balls and soirees. Yet, amidst the opulence and revelry, a tragedy unfolded. Eliza Carmichael, the youngest of the family at just 7 years old, was a curious and playful child. She loved exploring the mansion's many rooms and hallways. One day, during a particularly lavish party, Eliza decided to play hide-and-seek with some visiting children. She chose an old, seldom-used closet as her hiding spot, thinking no one would find her there. As the evening wore on and the festivities continued, Eliza's absence went unnoticed. The closet door, which was notorious for jamming, had shut tight, trapping the young girl inside. By the time she was discovered, it was too late. The mansion was filled with grief, and the once lively halls grew silent. Following the tragic incident, strange occurrences began to take place in the Carmichael mansion. Guests reported hearing soft giggles and footsteps in the corridors. Items would mysteriously move or disappear, only to reappear in the very closet where Eliza had been trapped. But the most unsettling of all was the sight of a young girl, resembling Eliza, peering out from behind doors and curtains, always vanishing before anyone could approach her. The mansion's reputation took a dark turn, and it remained uninhabited for years, with only the bravest of souls daring to step foot inside. Many attempted to cleanse or exorcise the home, but Eliza's spirit remained, forever searching for playmates. In the 1950s, a young couple, Peter and Lucy, unknowing of the mansion's history, decided to renovate and move in. Lucy, often alone due to Peter's work, began to experience Eliza's presence. Instead of fear, however, Lucy felt a deep sympathy for the lonely spirit. She decided to set up a playroom in the house, filling it with toys and dolls from Eliza's era. One evening, as Lucy sat in the playroom reading a story aloud, she felt a cold breeze brush past her. Looking up, she saw the transparent figure of Eliza, listening intently. Over time, Lucy and Eliza formed a bond, with Lucy often reading or singing to the spirit, giving her the companionship she so desperately craved. Word of Lucy's success spread, and the mansion once again became a place of joy and laughter. Families with children would visit, playing games and telling stories, ensuring Eliza was never alone again. Today, the Carmichael Mansion stands as a testament to the power of understanding and compassion. While Eliza's presence is still felt, it is no longer one of sorrow but of happiness and gratitude, forever grateful to Lucy and the many visitors who turned her eternal resting place into a home filled with love. The Angry Man in the Basement. In a quiet, suburban neighborhood of Cedar Grove, there stood an old Victorian-era house painted a faded shade of blue, with ivy creeping up its walls. The house, known as the Harrington residence, had been vacant for years, its windows boarded up, its garden overrun with weeds. The reason, the chilling legend of the angry man in the basement. In the early 1900s, the house belonged to the Harringtons, a seemingly typical family of 4. Mr. Albert Harrington, the head of the household, was known to be a reserved man, often keeping to himself. While his wife and children mingled with the community, Albert spent most of his time in the basement, working on various projects. Over time, his demeanor changed. He became irritable, snapping at the slightest provocation, and his once loving relationship with his family grew strained. Whispers began to circulate about Albert's increasingly erratic behavior. Some said he was dabbling in forbidden arts. Others believed he had discovered something sinister in the basement, but no one knew for sure. The only certainty was the loud, angry outbursts that echoed from the house at night. One fateful evening, a blood-curdling scream pierced the stillness of Cedar Grove. Neighbors rushed to the Harrington residence to find the front door ajar. Inside, the house was in disarray with signs of a struggle. The family was nowhere to be found, but the basement door stood ominously open. Descending the creaky stairs, the neighbors were met with a chilling sight. The basement walls were covered in strange symbols and writings, and in the center of the room lay Albert, his eyes wide open in terror, lifeless. The police were baffled. No trace of the Harrington family was ever found, and Albert's cause of death remained a mystery. With no heirs, the house was left abandoned, a grim reminder of the tragedy that befell the Harringtons. Years passed, but the house remained untouched, as rumors of ghostly apparitions and eerie sounds from the basement deterred any potential buyers. Those brave enough to venture inside spoke of a malevolent presence, an overwhelming feeling of anger and hostility. In the 1970s, a young couple, Mark and Jenna, skeptics of the supernatural, purchased the house at a bargain price, determined to restore it to its former glory. Initially, all seemed well. However, as they began renovations, especially in the basement, strange occurrences began. Tools would go missing, only to reappear in impossible places. Lights would flicker, and chilling drafts would sweep through the house. But the most terrifying incidents were the angry, disembodied shouts that echoed from the basement, sending shivers down their spines. Determined to uncover the truth, Mark and Jenna enlisted the help of a local historian. Together, they unearthed old documents that revealed a dark secret. The land on which the Harrington residence stood was once a burial ground, desecrated by settlers. Albert's basement experiments had unwittingly disturbed the spirits, leading to the family's tragic end. With this newfound knowledge, Mark and Jenna sought the help of a spiritual medium. Through a series of rituals, they managed to appease the angered spirits, offering apologies and promising to honor the land's history. The disturbances ceased, and the Harrington residence was transformed into a community center, with a memorial garden dedicated to the souls once buried there. While the angry man in the basement was finally at peace, his legend lived on, a cautionary tale of the consequences of meddling with forces beyond our understanding. The Boy in the Graveyard. The town of Elmridge, nestled in the embrace of a dense pine forest, was known for its picturesque landscapes and a centuries-old graveyard, the Whispering Pines Cemetery. This quiet resting place, with its moss-covered tombstones and ancient oaks, held a chilling legend that kept children away and made adults cross themselves when they passed by. As the legend goes, in the late 1800s, a young boy named Samuel, with golden locks and piercing blue eyes, often played near the graveyard. He was an orphan, taken in by the town's baker and his wife. Samuel's favorite game was to play hide-and-seek among the tombstones, much to the dismay of the town's elders who believed the cemetery to be sacred ground. One fateful evening, as the sun cast long shadows and a mist began to rise, Samuel was playing in the graveyard. When darkness fully enveloped the town, the boy had not returned. A search party was organized, lanterns lit and voices called out, but Samuel was nowhere to be found. The next morning, a grave digger claimed he heard faint giggles coming from a freshly dug grave. Rushing to the spot, the townspeople were horrified to find Samuel's lifeless body, with a serene smile on his face as if he was still playing his favorite game. Heartbroken and puzzled by the mysterious circumstances of his death, the town buried Samuel in the very graveyard he loved so much, hoping his soul would find peace. But peace was not to be. Soon after, children began to speak of seeing a boy with golden locks, beckoning them to play hide-and-seek in the graveyard. Those who accepted his challenge were often found in a trance-like state near Samuel's grave, with no memory of the hours they had lost. Elders warned children to stay away from the cemetery, especially after sunset. But curiosity often got the better of them, and every few years another child would disappear, only to be found near Samuel's grave, with that same serene smile on their face. As the years turned to decades and the legend grew, the town erected a wrought-iron fence around the cemetery, with a sign that read, "Beware the boy in the graveyard." In the early 2000s, a paranormal investigator named Miles ventured into Elmridge, hoping to debunk the legend. Equipped with cameras and sensors, he spent a night in the cemetery. The next morning, the town found him sitting near Samuel's grave, his equipment scattered around, and a distant look in his eyes. When questioned, Miles spoke of a playful boy who just wanted friends to play with. He left Elmridge and never returned, but he often spoke of the genuine happiness he felt when playing hide-and-seek with Samuel. Today, the Whispering Pines Cemetery remains a place of mystery and wonder. While many avoid it, some brave souls venture in, hoping to catch a glimpse of the golden-locked boy, and perhaps join him in a game that transcends the boundaries of life and death. Footsteps Below Deck. The picturesque port town of Harborview was home to many tales of the sea, but none as spine-tingling as the legend of the ship, the Silent Serenade. This grand vessel, with its massive sails and polished wood, had a history stretching back over 2 centuries. Its beauty, however, was overshadowed by a haunting mystery that deterred even the bravest sailors from boarding her. In the late 1700s, the Silent Serenade set sail from Harborview with a crew of 30 men, captained by the ambitious and fearless Captain Elias Blackthorne. The ship was bound for the distant shores of the Indies, laden with spices, silk, and treasures. Yet weeks turned into months, and there was no word from Captain Blackthorne or his crew. The ship was declared lost at sea, and the town mourned its brave sailors. One foggy morning, almost a year after its departure, the Silent Serenade mysteriously reappeared in the harbour, its sails torn and its deck abandoned. The townspeople, elated at its return, rushed aboard, expecting to find the crew or at least some clue to their fate. But the ship was eerily empty, save for a single haunting note found in Captain Blackthorne's cabin: "Beware the footsteps below deck." As night fell, curious townsfolk who ventured aboard claimed to hear faint footsteps echoing from below deck, as if an invisible crew was still manning the ship. Those brave enough to descend into the ship's bowels found nothing but empty hammocks swaying and lanterns eerily flickering on their own. Over the years, many tried to repurpose the ship or solve the mystery, but all were met with the same haunting footsteps and an inexplicable feeling of dread. Some claimed they saw ghostly apparitions of Captain Blackthorne pacing the deck, his eyes filled with regret. As the legend grew, sailors and adventurers from all over came to Harborview, hoping to unravel the mystery. Some said the ship was cursed after Captain Blackthorne and his crew discovered a forbidden treasure. Others believed they had angered the spirits of the deep. Yet the footsteps below deck continued, and the ship's tragic past remained a mystery. In the 1900s, a renowned paranormal investigator, Dr. Lillian Hart, decided to spend a night aboard the Silent Serenade. Armed with her tools and a steely resolve, she hoped to communicate with the spirits trapped within. As dawn broke, Dr. Hart emerged, pale and shaken. She spoke of tormented souls trapped in a loop, forever reliving their final moments. She urged the town to give the ship a proper sea burial, allowing the spirits to find peace. Heeding her advice, the townspeople held a grand ceremony, pushing the silent serenade out to sea and setting it ablaze. As the flames consumed the ship, onlookers claimed to hear a chorus of thankful whispers carried by the wind. Today, on foggy nights in Harbour View, when the moon casts a silvery glow on the waters, many claim to see the ghostly silhouette of the silent serenade sailing peacefully into the horizon, free from the chains of its haunted past. The Old Woman in the Window. Nestled at the end of a winding lane in the quaint town of Rosehaven was the historic Alden Manor. This grand edifice, with its ivy-clad bricks and Gothic architecture, had been a landmark for over 3 centuries. However, as imposing as it seemed, the townspeople of Rosehaven gave it a wide berth, speaking in hushed tones about the old woman visible in the window of the manor's highest turret. The story dates back to the 1800s, with Lady Isabella Alden, the last descendant of the Alden lineage. Famed for her radiant beauty and gentle demeanour, Isabella was also notably reclusive, seldom venturing beyond the manor's confines. As years drifted by, she became increasingly isolated, her only companion being her loyal handmaiden, Clara. The town was rife with whispers about Isabella's solitude, with tales of heartbreak and treachery echoing in the local inns. On a stormy winter evening, fierce winds howled through Rosehaven. Lightning streaked the heavens, and thunder rumbled ominously. Come dawn, Clara was found near the town's fountain, soaked to the bone, muttering incessantly about Lady Isabella and the fateful turret window. Since that ominous morning, each night the spectral figure of an aged woman could be discerned in the window, her gaze distant and melancholic. The manor became a place of unease, with residents claiming to discern faint melodies and experience unexpected chills, even during summer nights. As time wore on, the tale of the old woman in the window became ingrained in Rosehaven's lore. Adventurous youngsters challenged one another to approach the manor under the moonlight, and wayfarers were cautioned to bypass the serpentine lane post-dusk. In the 20th century, a researcher named Lydia Green, intrigued by this enduring legend, embarked on a mission to unravel the mysteries of Alden Manor. Delving into ancient correspondences and diaries, Lydia unveiled a sorrowful narrative. Isabella had been enamored with a seafarer who vowed to come back for her. Nightly, she stationed herself by the turret window, her eyes scouring the horizon for his returning vessel. However, he never reappeared, and a heartbroken Isabella spent her twilight years by that window, with Clara ever present at her side. Touched by Isabella's woeful romance, Lydia organized a commemorative event at Alden Manor in her memory. The townsfolk congregated, illuminating the night with candles and echoing the tunes that once emanated from the turret. That evening, for the first instance in countless decades, the turret window was devoid of any apparition. It was as though Lady Isabella's spirit, moved by the villagers' acknowledgement, had at last attained solace. Today, while Alden Manor stands as a testament to Rosehaven's storied past, the legend of the old woman in the window lingers as a heart-rending ode to love, despair, and the undying optimism that intertwines the two. The Wicked Sisters on Old Hallow Lane. Old Hallow Lane was a cobbled, narrow pathway that snaked through the heart of the town of Thistlewood. Once a bustling thoroughfare, it had become eerily silent over the years, overshadowed by the imposing presence of a dilapidated mansion known as Hollow House. This ominous edifice was infamous not for its decayed grandeur, but for the tales of the wicked sisters who once resided there. In the late 1800s, Hollow House was home to the Halloway sisters, Agatha and Millicent. These two were as different as night and day. Agatha the elder was stoic and stern, with piercing eyes and a sharp tongue. Millicent, on the other hand, was effervescent and seemingly carefree, her laughter echoing through the halls, but beneath their contrasting demeanours lay a shared penchant for the dark arts. Thistlewood was a town that thrived on its traditions, and the most anticipated was the annual harvest festival. Families gathered, children played, and the air was filled with the aroma of baked goods and roasted meats. However, one tradition was observed with a sense of dread, the giving of the first harvest to the HALLOW sisters. It was said that if the offering was deemed unworthy, misfortune would befall the town. Year after year, the townspeople would hesitantly place their offerings at the doorstep of HALLOW House. Most years passed without incident, but every so often crops would fail, livestock would perish, and sickness would spread. The sisters' power was undeniable. One fateful year, a young farmer named Elias, tired of living in fear, decided to challenge the sisters. Instead of the customary basket of fresh produce, he left a single withered apple at their door. The next morning, Elias's fields were barren, his well dried up, and his home was consumed by an unquenchable fire. Terrified by the sisters' wrath, the town's council convened a secret meeting. With the help of an enigmatic traveller well versed in the mystical arts, they devised a plan to imprison the sisters' spirits. On the eve of the next harvest festival, the traveller performed an arcane ritual, binding the souls of Agatha and Millicent to HALLOW House. The years that followed saw Thistlewood flourish like never before. Old Hallow Lane, however, remained desolate, with HALLOW House standing as a grim reminder of the past. Whispers persisted of eerie sightings and strange occurrences. On moonlit nights, one could hear the haunting laughter of Millicent intertwined with Agatha's chilling whispers. Today, children are warned not to venture near Old Hallow Lane after dark, for while the wicked sisters may be bound to their former home, their malevolence lingers, waiting for the opportune moment to reclaim what was once theirs. The Shadows in the Valley. In the heartland of the great state of Tarnwood, surrounded by verdant meadows and dense forests, lay the serene Dove Valley. For generations, the valley had been home to a close-knit community of farmers and craftsmen. Life here was simple, governed by the changing seasons and the cycles of nature. But as dusk approached and the sun's golden rays gave way to twilight, a hushed stillness would envelop the valley. For when night fell, the shadows emerged. The legend of the shadows was as old as Dove Valley itself. Elders spoke of formless entities, darker than the blackest night, that roamed the valley after sundown. They whispered through the crops, rustled the trees, and danced over the rooftops. Though they bore no discernible shape, their presence was palpable, a cold, creeping sensation that prickled the skin and clouded the mind. Ms. Abigail, the valley's oldest resident, often regaled the children with tales from her youth. She spoke of a time when curiosity got the better of her and she ventured out after dark. She described feeling an icy grip around her heart and seeing the world through a murky haze. Shapes shifted, voices whispered, and an overwhelming sense of dread took hold. It was only the distant crowing of a rooster, signaling dawn, that broke the spell and guided her home. The origin of the shadows was a topic of much speculation. Some believed they were spirits of ancient warriors who once inhabited the valley, forever bound to the land they failed to protect. Others opined they were manifestations of nature itself, guarding the valley's secrets. But the most chilling theory was that the shadows were a reflection of one's innermost fears and regrets, bringing to life the darkness that resided within. Over the years, the residents of Dove Valley had developed their own set of rituals and customs to ward off the shadows. Homes were adorned with talismans made of hawthorn and sage. Children were taught rhymes that were believed to keep the shadows at bay, and every year, on the longest night, a grand bonfire was lit in the village square. The flames reaching for the heavens symbolized hope and unity, keeping the shadows confined to the periphery. But as is often the case, with time, skepticism began to creep in. The younger generation, bolstered by tales of the outside world and the march of progress, began to question the validity of the age-old legends. They dismissed the shadows as mere figments of imagination born out of isolation and superstition. It was on one such night, with the winds howling and the moon obscured by clouds, that a group of young rebels decided to defy tradition. They ventured deep into the valley, armed with nothing but their bravado. Hours turned into days, and when they did not return, panic gripped Dove Valley. A search party was dispatched, led by the village elder, Mr. Hawthorne. They combed the valley, calling out to the lost souls. It was at the break of dawn, in a clearing surrounded by ancient oak trees, that they found them. The young adventurers were in a trance, their eyes vacant, and their bodies swaying to an inaudible rhythm. Around them, the ground was etched with intricate patterns, as if drawn by unseen hands. The return to normalcy was slow and arduous. The affected individuals, though physically unharmed, carried the weight of their experience like a heavy shroud. They spoke of visions and voices, of regrets relived and fears faced. The shadows, they realized, were not just external entities, but reflections of the human psyche. The incident served as a somber reminder of the delicate balance between man and the unknown. Dove Valley once again embraced its traditions, not just out of fear, but out of respect for the forces that governed their world. Today, as night descends on Dove Valley, the warm glow of lanterns illuminates the homes, and the soft hum of lullabies fills the air. The shadows, with their enigmatic presence, continue to roam, serving as a bridge between the past and the present, between the seen and the unseen. And the people of the valley, with their tales and rituals, continue to coexist, understanding that some mysteries are best left unexplored. The Old Man on the Side of the Road. Nestled between the cities of East Haven and Westford, there was a long, winding road known as the Silverway Stretch. This stretch of asphalt, surrounded by thick woodlands and overlooked by towering mountain ranges, was as picturesque as it was eerie. While many travelers used it as a shortcut between the two cities, there were countless tales that urged drivers to avoid the Silverway Stretch after sunset. The reason? The old man on the side of the road. Legend had it that decades ago, an elderly gentleman named Elias Gray used to live in a little cottage near the road. He was a hermit of sorts, seldom seen by the locals, and when he was, it was always in the context of him wandering the road, looking for something or someone. After his mysterious disappearance, reports began to surface about an old man appearing on the Silverway Stretch, especially on foggy nights. The stories varied, but a common thread ran through them all. Travelers, especially those driving alone, would spot an old man on the side of the road, his silhouette illuminated by the soft glow of the headlights. He appeared frail, with a long white beard and a hunched back, always draped in an old tattered coat. As drivers approached, he would raise his arm, signaling them to stop, his eyes filled with a desperate plea. Some claimed that upon stopping, the old man would speak of a lost locket, a memento from his departed wife, and ask for help in finding it. Others said he would simply stare, tears streaming down his face, uttering words of gratitude and warning about the perils of the road ahead. Jenna, a young journalist from East Haven, was always fascinated by urban legends. Determined to uncover the truth behind the tales of the old man, she decided to drive the Silverway Stretch late one foggy evening. Armed with a camera and a voice recorder, Jenna hoped to document any unusual occurrences. As the fog grew denser, reducing visibility to mere feet, Jenna's car headlights caught the unmistakable figure of the old man. Heart racing, she pulled over and approached him. He looked at her with tear-filled eyes and whispered, "Thank you for stopping. Please help me find it." Intrigued, Jenna decided to help him search, and the two combed the area. After what felt like hours, they stumbled upon a rusted locket, its chain tangled in the underbrush. The old man clutched the locket to his chest, tears of joy replacing those of sorrow. "This," he whispered, "is all I had left of her. I can now rest." And with that he began to fade, his form dissipating into the fog. Jenna, shaken but determined, documented the entire event. When she returned to East Haven and shared her findings, many were skeptical, dismissing her experience as a mere hallucination. But there were others, especially those who had encountered the old man, who nodded in understanding. Over time, reports of the old man on the Silverway stretch diminished. Many believed that with the return of his cherished locket, Elias Gray's spirit found peace, but the legend lived on, a testament to love, loss, and the thin line between the living and the supernatural. Today, a small memorial stands at the spot where Jenna encountered the old man. Travelers often leave flowers, notes, and trinkets, paying their respects to Elias Gray and the eternal love he held for his departed wife. And while the Silverway stretch is no longer feared as it once was, those who drive it on foggy nights often report a comforting presence guiding them safely on their journey.